So I'm going to start my Futures in 3D project, and that is the EDIO 2.6 course. And so I have some of my materials here. I have my mixed media pad that has my sketches and uh, and my plate, my texture rubbing plate, and my paper clay. And then I just have this tool for my ceramic studio, my pottery studio. But I mean, you could definitely use um, pencils or butter knife or a fork or any of these kind of tools in order to sculpt with. So anything that you have handy, anything you have handy will do. Now, there's just a couple of requirements that you want to keep in mind when you're doing your sculpture. Because it's a sculpture, it has to work from all angles. So make sure that you're turning your sculpture as you're working on it. Also, some of the requirements as far as it being a futurism sculpture is that it has to have texture, it has to have hollows, and it has to have ridges. So the hollows are holes or shapes, that create negative space in your sculpture. And they are kind of like the idea of what a shape would be in a drawing. So a hollow is kind of correlates to a shape, and then ridges are kind of like lines. They are three-dimensional lines. So we'll just talk about that in class and work on that now. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my clay, and hopefully you haven't opened up your clay because it'll dry out in a day or two. So don't open it until you're ready to work on it. Take it out of the packet, and it's just a nice white block of modeling clay. So you want to kind of squish it around with your hands to warm it up and get it more pliable. The more you work with it and squish it around, the more pliable it'll get. And that's kind of like what you want. It's also really handy to have a container of water close by, a little cup of water, and that will help you keep it from drying out. You can just rub a little water on the surface whenever you see it starting to dry out. Okay, so I'm just going to keep working my clay until it loosens up a bit. All right, so I also have my original drawing, my original plate of my two poses. So this is the my figurines cut out and glued down. You could see the head glued down so well. And this is the sheet that I took my texture rubbing from. And this is my textured rubbing that I took. So basically I have some movement in the legs and the arms to show, that like stop action motion kind of idea. And then from this, I did a sketch of what I want my sculpture to look like, because I think it's a lot easier if you have some ideas put down on paper instead of just starting from scratch with a block. So let me show you the drawing that I did. So this is what I'm gonna work towards for my sculpture. And basically what I did was I abstracted my my drawing, my textured rubbing drawing. So I didn't want to do the whole thing because, I'm also trying to have a weighted balance. And, this guy is really tall and skinny. So I wasn't thinking that this would be such a great example of weighted balance. So I wanted to use just basically the arms that are moving around because I think that shows a lot of action. And the torso, I just took the torso shape, which is kind of like almost like a heart shape here. Guess you can see it. And I turned the torso this way and then took the arms and kind of put it on the top. So that's how I got, this is the torso shape. And then these are kind of like the arms moving around. And I think that that has a lot of movement to it. And here are my ridges. So I'm going to put some ridges that kind of float around and up these kind of like arms. I made the arms look a little bit more like flames. And then here are my hollows. So I have a hollow here in the center, which I hope is going to kind of help that energy move around like this and then up this way like that. Right. And then also, if you were to turn this around sideways, I want to have some little flames kind of shooting out from the side so that it kind of works from all angles. Okay, so I'm going to get started on that. So I'm going to use I think um about 2/3 of my clay, maybe a little bit more than half for the base to have that weighted balance. So I'm just going to separate those amounts. So this is going to be the base. I think maybe I'll take a little bit more off. This is going to be the base, and then this is going to be kind of what I hope to be the arms that come off the top. So I'm gonna take this clay that I have left over that I'm not going to be working with right now, and I'm going to put it back into this plastic bag that came in because I just want to stop it from drying out for now. So I'll just put that to the side. And this guy, I'm going to just roll it around on my tabletop to make it into a nice smooth sphere that I can then work with a little bit. So I'm just going to work on getting this to be the right shape. And I'm going to turn off the video and I'll come back when I get it to be looking more like that base. All right, so I have my base kind of shape made. And I think that this clay is a little on the dry side, and I hope that yours isn't the same, but it keeps cracking. So I just keep adding pressure to it. So I have this tool, but like I said, you could use a butter knife or even, like this is a Sharpie marker and just keep compressing it so that it kind of like stays together. Otherwise, it's really crumbly. So yeah, these little tools, anything, pencil, really help in keeping it together. Anyway, now I'm going to start to add on these arms, these flamey arm looking things, and then I'll come back as soon as I get that done. So I'm starting to add on my armage, my little arms, my little, like my flamey kind of arms. So I am going to, I think instead of using water, I think it will be very helpful. I'm actually going to start to incorporate some glue into this sculpture because my clay is so dry um, that I think if I work with a little bit of glue and some pressure, I can get it to kind of like start sticking together. But I'm having a hard time with cracking and moisture. So that seems to be helping a lot just because the Elmer's glue is on the wet side, but it's also a little bit of an adhesive. And using a tool to kind of like push it and mush it together, I think is going to be the best bet. So I have a pretty bad crack happening right there. So I'm just going to squeeze a little bit of Elmer's glue in that area and then work it together with this tool. And again, don't worry if you don't have one of these tools. You could use a butter knife or back of a spoon or anything like that. Um, I have to keep making sure that I'm not changing the shape of my base by holding it and kind of mushing everything together because I think that could really happen easily because I'm just holding it and creating all this pressure. So just be careful, just kind of be careful a little bit of that. And okay, I'm gonna pause the recording so it doesn't become too long. So I have the main shape of my sculpture, and I'm just adding on some like little like sticks or arms or whatever you want to call them, appendages that stick out from the main body because I want it to work, from every angle. So I'm just trying to get that in. My clay is really drying out quickly, so I'm having a hard time working as quick as I need to. Um, Maybe you could just keep adding water to the surface and rubbing in the water, but I'm having a lot of cracking going on. Um, so that's a bit of a bummer. Um, I've added a lot of glue to the surface. I don't know if you can see some of the glue, and I kind of rubbed it in. It seems to be making the surface of the clay a little bit more stickier so that I can add and subtract things from it. But I like the way it's turning out. I'm just going to add a couple more of these little side angles. And the way I'm doing that is I'm just taking a little ball of clay and so like a little ball of clay, and then I'm just squeezing it into almost like a teardrop shape, and then sticking it on at an angle, and then just using a tool to kind of like smush it in to the main part of the clay, and then just kind of shaping it with my fingers. But I am definitely finding that the that putting Elmer's glue on the surface is helping a lot. So hopefully that works for you. And I'm just going to add a couple more of these kind of horny looking arms or whatever you want to call them, and then I'm going to pretty much be done mine. So yeah, I hope that if you are finding that your clay is very dry, just add some moisture to it and try to add a little bit of the Elmer's glue to the surface. I think it really helps a lot. Okay, I'm gonna finish up this a little bit and I'm gonna come back to show you. I'm gonna add some ridges to it. So I have my hollows, my shapes. Here's my hollow. There's a bunch of hollows up here too. And and I'll be back. I'll be back in a little bit to show you the rest. Okay, so I got my basic shape. Um, and it's the lighting here is a bit bright, so it's hard to see, but I'm gonna try to move it around at all different angles so that you can see what's happening. The sun is very bright. Anyway, I'm gonna see if I can add some that kind of helps. You can kind of see a little bit better. I'm gonna add some ridges. So I'm just gonna use this tool. You can use like a butter knife or something like that. But basically, I'm gonna draw into the tool. I'm gonna see if I can get it to be not so bright in here. And so you can see what I'm doing better. Hold on a second. Okay, so I blocked off some of the light, so I think you can see my sculpture a little bit better. I'm just gonna hold it this way. And so I have all these kind of arms sticking out all over the place. So now I'm just going to take this tool here and I'm just going to add in some ridges. So basically I'm just carving in. I want to make it look like kind of like bark, but I'm going to smooth it out a little bit so that it doesn't just look like, I sliced into it. It looks like it actually is part of the form. So just smoothing it out a little bit. And whatever technique that you find works for you. That's the way to go. Now, when we finish this project, I'm gonna add more glue because I really think that the glue helps the surface. So I just put a line of glue around it, and then I use my tool to kind of work it in, and it instantly makes it easier to work with. So hopefully you can kind of do that too. All right, so I think I'm gonna start to wind it down and let it dry a little bit because it is very, 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 very wet because I added tons, but I'm gonna keep adding these ridges to help the flow, right? That's what we're doing. We're using ridges to create flow. All right, so I think that's it for me for now. This is my futurist sculpture, very abstract. And then the next step is to let it dry and paint it. Okay, so these are the materials I have. I have my acrylic paints, which hopefully you have, and I have a couple of paper towels. I have this is just a container that I'm going to put my paint in and mix my paint in there. I have a paintbrush, and then I have another little container full of water. I don't know if you can see the water in there, but there's water in there. And then I have a sketch that I did of my sculpture, and then I added color in my sketch, excuse me, because I wanted to kind of like have some kind of idea figured out about what I was going to do with color. And then here's my sculpture. And I painted one side. Let me see if I could put this white behind it so maybe you can see it better. I painted one side just to give you like some idea of where I was going with this compared to my drawing. And now I'm gonna paint the other side. And now what I found out was kind of like the hardest thing to do was that I made a ton of texture in my sculpture. And so I really had to work my paintbrush like into the texture to get full coverage. So we're working with a limited palette. So I'm gonna take my acrylics out and these acrylics are pretty good, actually. They are not the cheapest um, acrylics I have ever used. Now I'm using primary colors, so I'm using yellow, red, and blue. And those are the colors that I'm going to use. Now you can use like, I noticed on Faith's, it looked like Faith, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but your sculpture looked like you used red, black, and white as your limited palette. Is that, oh, uh-oh, just got blue all over my yellow. Is that right? Would you say, would you say that you used a limited palette of red and white and black, violet, purple, and white. Okay, great, great. Well, that is a perfect limited palette. So when they talk about a limited palette, which we'll actually discuss as soon as we're done our demo, they're talking about using three colors. Now, oh my gosh, when I was in art school after I graduated from college, I'm sorry, I graduated from high school and I went right into art school. And for the whole first year, for the entire first year, they only let us paint with one color and white and black. And you know what else we weren't allowed to use? We weren't allowed to use a paintbrush. For the whole first year, we had to paint with our palette knife and only use one color, and we could choose what color it was, and white and black. And then that wasn't for a whole year. That was for about like maybe 6 months or so. for some time. And then they let us add another color and then add another color. And then by the end of my freshman year, um, we had like, almost a full palette. But it really taught you how to be very creative. So I'm going to use blue first, and I'm going to put most of my blue down towards the bottom. And I'm just going to follow the flow that I think I've already established with the shape of my sculpture. So my sculpture, I want to look like it's kind of like rising up and kind of the flow is kind of going out the top. So I'm going to make the visual balance weight uh, also agree with the weighted balance. So I want it to look heavier on the bottom. And the way you make something look heavier on the bottom is to put most of the dark colors on the bottom and then go into the light colors towards the top. But I do want to, I'm going to add a little water to this to thin it out because it's a little thick. I do want to bring some of the blue up into the top because I don't want it to be completely bottom heavy. So I'm just going to bring just a couple little lines here and there to bring color up in there. Now, when I just added a little bit of water to my paint, oh my God, the ability to spread it around into the creases just like tripled. So if you are having a hard time pushing your paint around your sculpture, just add a little bit of water and um and it'll start to flow much better. Now I'm going to clean off my brush. I'm going to stop with the blue, but I'm going to use blue to mix in some purple. So I'm going to mix some red into my blue. Now the thing about mixing paint is you always add dark to light, right? So my red is lighter than my blue. So I'm going to take some red, right? And then I'm going to add some blue to my red. You never add light to dark because it takes so much paint to lighten a dark color, but it only takes a little bit of paint to darken a light color, if that makes sense. So you want to add dark to light because you'll get to the color that you want faster that way. Hope that makes sense. All right, now I'm going to add this purple color that I just mixed in like this. I'm just going to put it in some areas. Got to add a little bit of water so it flows much nicer. And I'm gonna start to work a little bit quicker now. And I hope that you guys are working on your sculptures at the same time. It'll be fun to show our sculptures at the end when we're done. So I'm just gonna try to follow the flow of my sculpture here. All right, that's more than enough purple. I didn't want to put a ton of purple on it. I want to stay more with the reds and yellows. So I'm gonna do my yellow next before my water gets too dirty. And I'm gonna use a lot more yellow than any other color because I want my sculpture to be kind of bright and sunny, right? So I'm gonna just put a bunch of, and I can always go back in with some of the other colors, but I want it to follow, kind of like what I did in my drawing. So I'm just going to put this around. Like the lighter color, like yellow, I could almost just paint the yellow everywhere. And, because I could put the other colors on top of the yellow once it dries, because it's easy to cover over yellow because it's light, right? Makes sense, right? You guys understand that. I am going to put a little bit of yellow down in the base though, because I don't want the base to be completely without, oops, accidentally just got some red on my paintbrush. So it's a really good idea to kind of work with one color at a time because that way your paintbrush stays cleaner. Your colors will be pure. Like there's a term that painters use. It's called when your color gets muddy, right? And the way that your colors get muddy is when you accidentally mix a bunch of colors together and they go towards brown, right? That's what happens. It's like the more colors you mix together, the more they're likely to kind of go to like brown or gray or more like muddy colors. Now I'm going to mix some orange, right? So I'm putting my dark color, red, into my light color, right? Not the opposite way around. I got to put this down so I can. All right, so there I got a nice orange mixed over here. I'm going to add a little bit of water to make it nice and flowy. And now I'm going to put this everywhere. So I want orange in the bottom for sure because orange is complementary color to blue, and that'll make the blue on the bottom stand out much more. And now I'm going to just start to try to get as much orange in other areas as possible. I always think that orange is one of my favorite colors. And then I'll go through this mood where I'm like, you know what? I'm back to red. So I think I don't have a favorite color. I think I love all the colors. Like none really deserves more attention than the other, in my opinion. All right. I want to mix some green. I'm going to mix some green before I use up all my areas. So as you know, green is blue and yellow. So yellow is the lighter color. So I'm going to mix some blue into my yellow instead of the opposite way around. And I'll get some green. Now I kind of want to have a lighter green. I don't want to be a real dark, dark green. So I'm going to try to get a lot of yellow into the blue. I'm going to add a little bit of water so it's flowy and just go put that on a couple of places. Bring that idea of the color kind of being everywhere, even though it might be concentrated more in one area. And I'm running out of places to put color. I almost have all of my white covered up. Make sure you're turning your sculpture so that you're seeing all the areas that need color because you need to activate every area, right? You want your entire sculpture to be covered. Take advantage of every area that you can. All right, so I'm just going to put some more color down here on my base. I'm going to put some greens and blues together. And then I'll call it a day. Here's some purple. I have some purple over here. All right. So I'm just going to add a little bit more color to the sides over here. I think I'll do that after class. But there's my sculpture. I have some edges. I have some edges, right? Some edges here with these guys are sticking out. My hollows, my shapes, form. And I think I have pretty good flow because I feel like the stripes of my color are reinforcing that upward movement. I think I like this side better. Anyway, that is my future sculpture.